What's up, YouTube? I am the Vanilla Nerd, and in keeping with my namesake, there is another big name IP that I want and get to talk about today, and that is Star Trek. Now, I'm a big Star Trek fan because my father is a big Star Trek fan, and I really look forward to to reviewing this upcoming movie today because I know he'll be watching and he'll get to enjoy it. So, yeah, in case you're wondering, the movie in question is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. And this is a great movie. I really like it. Can't wait to talk about it in a second. But first, obligatory spoiler warning. I will be talking about this movie from its entirety, beginning to end, in this review. So if you haven't seen it yet and you want to watch it and don't want it spoiled, get out while you have a chance. But I will say this movie is over 40 years old, which is mind-boggling, but also you should have seen it by now, you know? And if you haven't, well, get on it. Anywho, I'm going to do a review. See you in a second. So, Star Trek II. Out of the gate, I really like how well paced this movie was. It just moved real quickly, and I think part of that is because the last time I watched this, I was a kid, and my attention span was probably much lower. So, this movie moved a lot faster than I remember. Now, it's still a slow burn. It's not fast-paced by any stretch of the imagination, but I just really liked how each scene flowed to the next, and there was never a point where I just felt like it was dragging super slow. That's just my opinion. Be that as it may. I think one thing that really helps that, though, is that this movie is only an hour and 59 minutes long, which compared to a lot of movies that are typically 2.5 hours long these days, that's a nice breath of fresh air because it's 30 minutes shorter, and that's real nice. Moving on, the other real big thing that I love about this movie is the space battle. Oh my goodness. The main conflict of this movie is two ships, the Enterprise and the Reliant, going at it against each other. They both look distinctively different, and I really appreciate that. The Starship Enterprise is a classic look, just so classic. It's kind of weird, but I love it. You know, I love how they have these two giant engines, propped up on two tiny little arms. It looks flimsy and dangerous, but it works. You know, it's Star Trek, and Star Trek in general. I just love the look of the Enterprise, but focusing on this movie specifically, I really appreciated how the big battle between the Enterprise and the Reliant, they had two very distinct looking ships that looked like they could be absolutely from the same technology people. You know, the same person who created the Enterprise could have made the Reliant, and obviously it was done intentionally. They're both Federation ships, but I still like how distinctive they look in spite of that. And also, side note, the Miranda class, the type of ship that the USS Reliant is one of my favorite ships in all of Star Trek. I love the look and feel of that ship. It's so good. So, I really like the space battle, and we'll talk more about the actual battle here in a second, but I wanted to highlight the ships in my opening remarks. Moving on, I really loved Kirk and Spock in this one. They both played off each other really well. I loved Kirk outsmarting Khan a couple of times, using code using code with Spock when he knew Khan was listening in, and then similarly he outsmarted Khan by being able to remote control his spaceship for a second and turn down the shields. So he could hit him and hurt him. And so it was great, On top of all of that, I really liked how Kirk kind of put forth his main ideology, which is that he doesn't believe in no-win scenarios. And he's this space swashbuckler. And I really like that. That they kind of re-emphasized that in this movie, and they showed it. And then they showed the detriments, at the end when Spock dies and he's forced to face death for the first real time. I mean, it kind of puts a damper on all the deaths he witnessed in the original the original series, I should say. All those red shirts that died, I guess he was never really close with any of them. But also all the other characters he got close to and died, there was a lot of death that happened in the original series. And I'm not minding that or anything. I just think it's kind of funny that the big point of this movie was you've never truly faced death, have you? And it's I guess all the death he faced in his prime years doesn't really count. But to be fair, Spock is his closest friend, and losing a close friend is very different from losing someone that you've only known for 3 or 4 days or what have you. So I really like Kirk and Spock, and I really like how that works for this film. in keeping with the idea of character, let's talk about the main villain, Khan. And I love Khan. He is so cool for this movie. I really like that they brought back this intimidating villain from the original series and made him the main villain of this movie. That's just so fun and so fantastic. And credit due where credit goes. Ricardo Montalban, the actor, is a fantastic actor. He did such a good job. He just displayed this calm anger and revenge so well. Now, I know he's not calm throughout the entire movie. He gets very animated. Don't get me wrong, but when he's describing his hatred of Kirk to Chekhov and the captain of the USS Reliant, he's seething with anger so much that he just remains perfectly calm. And it is fantastic. He is just such a good villain. And I wish more villains in movies took notes from him, because he is just so evil. He's so good, and he's terrifying. Like, I am scared of running across him and running into him. It's so good. And then on top of everything else, there's his look. I love his ragged uniform and the fact that he has these two cool gloves, but he takes one off and he just has the one glove with the metal pieces. And I love his entrance. All of the rest of his crew have already taken off their desert gear, but he does the slow take off of his desert gear. So you have this nice slow reveal of who Khan is. And it's just, Khan is so cool. And I love his villain in this movie. I also love, in classic bad guy fashion, he has one of his underlings being the voice of reason, saying, hey, maybe we should escape. Maybe we should get out of here. Maybe we don't need to hurt Kirk anymore. And then he's just like, no, revenge is the only goal. And that is the only thing worth doing anymore. And I just love it. I really like Khan in this film. And he's a big part of why this movie is so successful. And this movie really was quite successful. My dad, who saw it in theaters, talks about how everyone liked it, and a lot of people went to see it, even non-Star Trek fans, just because it was such a fun and cool and exciting movie. And in large part, that's because of the epic space battle. And another thing that my dad talks about is how the battle damage that gets shown in this film was super exciting, and the special effects were really good. Seeing the phasers from the Reliant create a streak and battle damage line across the Enterprise hull must have been awesome and so fun to see for the first time. And it's still cool for me to see, to this day and stuff. And I get it. In the original series, they probably only had half a dozen models of the original Enterprise, so they couldn't afford to show battle damage on it all the time. Although there was still that one ship in the Planet Eater episode that was a damaged Constitution class, which was really cool. But regardless, I digress. The point is that this movie actually had the budget, it had the means to show some battle damage, and battle damage did it show, and it was awesome and super cool. Another thing that I think works so well with this space battle is that it's a sensical space battle, rather than just saying, oh yeah, this ship fired more weapons than that ship. I feel like it makes a lot of sense. Khan got this early surprise attack that hurt them, really, really bad and destroyed them really, really poorly and stuff. And then Kirk got in a lucky shot because he knew how to remote control their ship. They both, fly away for a second and, heal up their ships as best they can, but they're not perfect. They're not back to full operating order. They go into the nebula to kind of equal things out. They both get some shots in the nebula, but ultimately Kirk arrives on top because unlike Khan, who is, still stuck back in the 90s, because canonically, Khan is from the 1990s, so he's not used to space battle. He's not used to space warfare. So he doesn't think in 3 dimensions. His search pattern and his thoughts are initially 2-dimensional. And so Kirk is able to outsmart him by thinking in 3 dimensions. And it's fun, it's exciting, it's action-packed. And in the end, probably the best thing about this movie is that there wasn't this big happy ending where everyone made it out okay. They had to have some sacrifice. Spock had to die, tragically. And even though we all knew that he was coming back in the next movie, my wife, who had never seen this movie before, after she sees Spock die, she's like, so he's going to be in the next movie? I'm like, yeah, he's in the next movie. And apparently it didn't fool the 1980s kids either. My dad knew instantly that Spock was going to come back some way, some shape or form. and stuff. But that's for the next movie. The point is, for this movie, I still think his death is poignant, it's powerful, and it's fun. I love seeing Kirk's eulogy and how sad he is over the death of his friend. I love seeing him deal with death, seemingly for the first time, but maybe not necessarily death for the first time, but the death of someone super close to him for the first time. It just works so well. And in the themes of the movie, it makes sense. You know, Khan is this powerful, powerful villain. If he didn't kill off someone, I really wouldn't respect Khan that much. But, you know, his villainy is so good, and he is such a malignant force that he is, you know, it takes the death of one of the key core members of the Starship Enterprise in order to beat him. And that is powerful. That is why I love this movie so much. And that's one of the big reasons why I think it is so successful. Now, while this movie is a success, I don't think it's all, you know, successes and it's perfect and by any stretch of the imagination. One of the big issues that my dad actually pointed out to me was that in the famous Kobayashi Maru test, more on that in a second, they go up against Klingons rather than Romulans. And originally it was supposed to be Romulans, which makes sense. They canonically, leading up to this point, there was a Romulan neutral zone, but there wasn't any reason for a Klingon neutral zone. Before, the Klingons and Federation were kind of on an uneasy truce. So I don't know why they switched it, besides the fact that someone just thought that it would, you know, it was a cost-saving measure to have it be Klingons, since they had the makeup and the stuff for Klingons, and they had the ships already built for Klingons from the previous movie and stuff like that. So, it is what it is, fault of production. But more than that, I think the biggest problem I have with this movie is the Genesis plot device. So the Genesis device is a atomic bomb, essentially, that creates life on a planet and can do so in a matter of days, which is pretty cool. But I've never thought it was very cool or interesting. You know, they made a big deal about it being top secret, and the fact that, you know, McCoy goes on this whole spiel of like, whoa, now we're creating life? Like, this is crazy. What the heck? And I just never thought it was that interesting. I mean, yeah, terraforming is kind of cool and powerful, but it wasn't that cool of a device. And it felt such a big distraction from Khan, especially since like Khan gains an interest in Genesis for who knows what reason. Like, he never explains why he wants Genesis. He just has it. I mean, maybe he wanted to use it to, you know, transform the planet SETI Alpha 5 and turn it into, you know, his greatest defeat becomes his greatest triumph. I don't know, but it's never really explained. It's always felt separated from the rest of this movie. Now, the one thing I do like about Genesis is because it's a big bomb, I think it works really well for Khan to use kind of as his end game, you know? When he's dead, or basically dead, you know, struggling to live, he's got no other recourse, but he knows the Enterprise is struggling on power. He knows they can't escape, so he launches off this big bomb that's going to destroy the Enterprise, except for the fact that Spock is able to just barely fix the Enterprise's engine problems, and they're able to escape. So, fantastic in how it's used in the end, but overall I didn't think Genesis was that cool of an idea, and I think it's a rather weak point of this movie. And to top that all off, the creators of Genesis, this old love flame of his, Carol Marcus, and then his long-lost son, David, I never thought Kirk's family matters really just mattered at all. But let's move on to the Kobayashi Maru, because this is a point that I actually do love about this film. I love the Kobayashi Maru battle sequence. It is such a good metaphor for Kirk's ingenuity, the fact that he cheated, the fact that he outsmarted the program, the fact that he took it a couple times because he wasn't satisfied with a no-win situation. I just think it says so much about Kirk, and I love the fact that it's such a big plot point of this movie that keeps coming up. So, fantastic addition to Star Trek. I love the Kobayashi Maru. Great addition. Now, there's two other things I want to talk about. First is the creepiness of the bugs, the mind control bugs. They're just so terrifying. I hate how they get inside your body. You know, I've always been terrified of bugs inside me, and this just showed how terrible that would be. On top of all of that, it preyed on one of my biggest fears of losing my free will, because one, They put the little bugs in the helmet and then put the little helmets on Chekhov and the captain of the U.S. Reliant. And then they go in and they can't fight off the bugs. They can't stop the bugs from getting in their ears. Ugh, just terrifying. And then on top of all that, now their free will is completely gone because now the bugs make them do whatever Khan says, and it's just it's so creepy, so horrible. But I think that creep factor is good because it's the extra oomph that makes this movie just that much better because it's so good at being creepy. And I do appreciate that, if not the actual scene. Ugh, still scary. But to end on a little bit brighter note, let's talk about the setting and the two ships. I really like how Star Trek takes a very naval approach to space warfare, where it's two like destroyers or two ships going at each other with cannons and different torpedoes and stuff like that. Whereas, Star Trek takes the more dogfight approach, more of like planes fighting each other in the air and stuff. I think both have merit and both can be very, very cool and entertaining. And so with Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, this is the poster child for that naval combat. You have these two ships going at each other. And I really like seeing that. And it's really, really fun. Again, just to go back to that battle, I love the main battle of this movie. It's so good. And something that future Star Trek movies should definitely take notes from and incorporate in their future movies. So I hope that happens, but regardless, that is going to pretty much end my review for this movie. You had great characters with Kirk, Spock, and the villain Khan. You had a really fun setting with the two ships battling each other, and the inclusion of Genesis. Fine, I'll say it. It was fun. It was Star Trek-y, It showed off the exploration and the interesting science fiction aspects. And then on top of all of that, it had the creepy bugs. And so combining all that together, you have a really fun movie that's well-paced and action-packed and just good movie. So love this movie. Definitely would recommend to a friend. And that's me. Talk to you guys later.